Certainly glad you could join us today. That's just fantastic. We have instructors that travel all over the country, spreading the joy of painting.
It went from just watching him for entertainment to suddenly thinking, okay, I can do this. I hope I give people the courage to try it, make a few mistakes.
We don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents.
Hello, welcome to the painting studio. I'm Nic Hankins and I'm a certified Bob Ross instructor. It's my pleasure to be with you today to share with you a painting I developed from several visits to the Pacific Northwest. I've taken a lot of photographs out there and I want to show you how to paint a Pacific Northwest scene using the Bob Ross wet-on-wet technique. So come up to the canvas, we'll get started, and let me tell you what I've done to the canvas so far. I was just working on a little bit of background color. This is a mixture, and by the way, we'll of course run all the colors across the screen that you need to paint along with me, starting with the white, working around in the same order as I have them on the palette. I've mixed together a combination of Prussian blue, Van Dyke brown, and a little sap green. And that's a nice dark transparent color. I'm just applying a little bit of this to a canvas that has had some black gesso, water-based black gesso applied. And I just did that with an old foam brush. And I used it kind of loosely up here at the top just to roughly create the shape of some little distant pine trees. They don't look distant yet, but they will before we're finished. So stick around and let me show you how to create a really atmospheric landscape. We'll finish off. I just want to make sure I have a nice thin and even coating of this transparent color all over the canvas. I'm just going to touch it and make sure I get a little fingerprint of that dark color. I should still be able to see my fingerprint rather clearly. And of course, before I did the transparent color, I think I forgot to mention the entire canvas got a very thin, even coating of the liquid clear. Just a little bit of the liquid clear. You don't need much. So, with all of that preparation work out of the way, let's wash a brush and we'll get started. And of course, I always wash the brush in odorless paint thinner. That's just what Bob used. That's what I'll use too. Shake out the excess. Of course, to dry it, you just beat the devil out of it. All right. So with a nice, fresh, clean, dry brush, I'm going to go into just a small amount, very small amount of phthalo blue. Very, very little, just a little bit. Tap it out onto the palette. Don't need much at all. Drag it away from that big pile of paint and tap it into your brush. All right, let's come up to the canvas and get started. I'm going to jump up in the upper corner first and stretch this color out and down. You might notice I just allowed some of that green color to come right up into the sky. That's okay. I think a little bit of that green influence in there will look pretty, and it really won't be quite as noticeable when everything's all nice and finished. A little more of the color. I'll come up to the other side here in the other corner. Add a little bit of that nice rich blue. I really like phthalo blue. It's so bright and pretty. Some areas are thick, some areas are thin. Some areas have no paint at all, and that's what we want. All right. Let's go back and grab a clean dry brush. We'll have a little fun with clouds up here today. We'll just use a 2-inch brush and create some cloudy effects. I'm just going to go into the titanium white. Just tap the top corner of the brush into the paint. Like that. Tap, tap, tap. Let's come up here. I've left a little area there that's kind of light and bright. So let's think about, we'll just take the brush and tap it. Take the brush and tap it. That might be the easiest way to create clouds. Just by tapping the top corner into the canvas. You can create all sorts of shapes, all different types of movements. It's nice and loose and free. Don't overthink it, just kind of let it happen. And as I work down, periodically I'm just sort of wiping the brush off on a paper towel so it doesn't get too polluted too quickly. You will pick up some of that blue. As this is a wet-on-wet painting technique, you'll pick up some of that underneath color I'm just going to let a little bit of this drift down over the trees so we get a little bit of a misty effect. Maybe there's a little back here. Maybe we can even take what little bit's left in the brush and we'll just sort of push those background trees a little further back into the background. Titanium white's an opaque color, so when we add it to that nice transparent color that's on the canvas, we'll get just a beautiful little hazy effect. Looks like mist and fog off in the distance. And if you've ever been to the Pacific Northwest or gone hiking in the woods up there, you know how beautiful that can be. It's a very, very atmospheric, very expansive landscape, and those are some of my favorite to paint. That worked pretty well. Let me do just a little more of that, a little more of the titanium white. Let's come over here on this side. I'm just gonna push these little trees back into the distance as well. Create a little fog rolling through the valley back there. So we just have a hint of those trees being back there now. There we go. You can even take a little touch of that titanium white. Maybe there's a little more fog or a cloud that just sort of fell right out of the sky and down into the valley down here. Might look kind of neat. And that's just with the top corner of the brush. And a light little tap, tap, tap. Let's grab a very, very clean brush now. I'm just going to soften all of my cloud shapes up here with a big circular stroke. Very gently, I'll float across. Blend it into the painting, soften it down, make it look like a cloud should. Maybe the same thing down here. We'll just sort of blend away that bottom edge. And blend the top very lightly. Big circular strokes, and then across. Just to create a nice, foggy, ethereal look. Just a little mist in the valley back there. And then very gently, we'll just sort of brush over everything and bring it all together. All right. Let's go ahead and wash a brush. I'll wash another. I don't want to let them stack up. Shake it out good. Okay. Now, let's think about what we want to do back in the distance. You know, some of the areas that I've visited in the Pacific Northwest have some beautiful waterfalls. So let's see if we can add a little waterfall back here in the distance. For that, I'm going to use a fan brush. I'll pick up a good old fan brush. I'm just going to go right into the titanium white. And I'll add a little touch of phthalo blue. Doesn't need to be mixed real well. Just a variety of things happening on the brush. That's always nice, but a very, very soft blue. Let's come back here. We'll just sort of decide maybe there's a little stream winding its way across here. Maybe, whoop, it falls over. There's a little waterfall. And it continues on. And then, whoop, big waterfall. Over, and down, and just sort of release the pressure from the brush. The easy way to paint a big waterfall. Come back with a 2-inch brush and just sort of soften that from the bottom. From the bottom up, from the bottom up. Sets it into shadow at the base. And if you're not totally happy with your results, you can go back over them, but I warn you, be careful. Try not to go back over too many times. I can get away with maybe just one more little touch. But you don't want to destroy all this beautiful striation, all those little lines in the paint. It really sort of helps convey the idea of a little distant watery fall back there. Okay. Maybe, I think we need some cliffs to hold all this stuff in. So let's pick up some Van Dyke Brown. We'll use a good old palette knife. Love using that good old palette knife. I'm actually gonna kind of do a little housekeeping here, move my dark green out of the way so I've got more room to play here. So we'll pull that paint out very flat, cut through it and get just a fine little roll of Van Dyke brown on the knife. And let's come up here, and we really want to kind of buttress our waterfall. Give it a little support from either side. Just sort of let it cut right into the edge and then fall back away. There we go. Big rock cliff lives right there. Maybe there's another little outcropping up here, and then it kind of connects to it. The nice part is we don't need a great deal of dark paint on there because the canvas is already dark. So I'll just put it on very thinly. We'll add a little more of the same thing. Flatten that color out. Cut across, and again, our nice little roll of paint will come from the other side. There's another little cliff top. Maybe it kind of hangs on down and just over this edge. Something like so. Cover that up nice and dark first. Let's change to a small knife now. I'm going to use our small little painting knife. This is a number 5. I was using a number 10. This is a number 5. I'm going to pick up some titanium white and add to it just a little touch of the dark sienna and Van Dyke brown, maybe just a little more, and mix it to a marbled appearance. Something like that. We'll cut off a little roll of that paint very, very lightly. I'm just going to graze along top of our little embankment here. Give it a little touch of highlight. And it's sort of up to you to decide what the contour of your cliff looks like. How steep are the shoulders? Or does it have a very flat top? All of that's up to you. All of that's up to you. I just love this area of the country. It's so pretty. It's been a long time since I've been there, but it's always nice to go back and visit with painting. That's one of my favorite aspects of painting, is that I can just sort of take off and go visit anywhere I want on canvas, whenever I want. It's a nice thought. It's a nice thought. Maybe. Let's wipe the knife off. Let's say we need a little shadow color in there too. It wouldn't all be in the light. So let's use a little white, a little phthalo blue, and a little alizarin crimson. We'll make a nice violet color. I'll even use the small edge of the knife so we can sneak in here and get some cooler reflected light shadows. See, I want the top of the cliff to look very flat, and the front side's just going to kind of hang straight down. So we're creating the contour of the cliff just with the direction of the strokes. That's kind of cool. If you want it to sort of be recessed and go back in, you just use your strokes to indicate that. A little of that cool color on this side as well. Not very much. If we have a pound of highlight, we only need a few ounces of the reflected light or the shadow color. Just a little will do the job. Same is true if you've ever painted mountains. If you painted along with Bob, you painted one of those beautiful big Alaskan mountains, you don't need nearly as much shadow as you do the highlight. I'll just soften the base of all this. Light little taps. Maybe we'll soften the edges out here too. We'll sort of let it disappear into the mist. Just with the corner of the brush, I'm just going to diffuse some of those areas and blend them with a very, very light touch. Down here, we'll sort of sweep this upward. And if water is falling that far, I feel certain there would be a pretty significant splash at the bottom of the waterfall. So let's add a little bit of mist trailing up and floating away from the base of the waterfall. I'll just stick with that same brush. I'll tap into the white. There's a little blue in there, and that's fine too. Just tapping the top corner of the brush in there. And even tapping it on and sort of wiping it back out. We don't need very much. I think it would hit right about there. So we'll tap, 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 add a little splash, a little mist, and then really wipe the brush out, maybe even knock it out just a little bit. And I'll continue with, well, maybe I should change. Let's be safe. I tried to get away with something there and it didn't work. Let's be safe and we'll go to a completely clean and dry brush. There we go. Won't carry away the edges. We'll just let this drift upward and outward and away. I don't want any hard edges. Very, very soft. Very, very soft. Drifting away, drifting away. And then we'll just gently blend over all of that. All right. What to do next? What to do next? Maybe some happy little trees are in order. I think so. The whole northwest area, particularly Oregon. That's the state I remember visiting, Oregon. It's full of happy little trees and happy big trees too. So let's make a few of those. I'm just going to pick up that base color I started with. You remember the mixture blue, brown, and I believe we had sap green in there. Let's add a little more. Let's make a little more of this mixture. I'm going to use it throughout the painting, so let's pick up a nice big chunk of Prussian blue, Van Dyke brown, sap green, maybe even a little bit of alizarin crimson, just for good measure. Alizarin crimson, or a lizard in crimson. Maybe you call it that. That's what I call it. All right, that should be good. And from that mixture, I'm going to grab a small fan brush. We'll use a little number 3 fan brush. And from this mixture, I can actually control the value by adding just a little touch of white. I'm just going to pick up a little white on my brush and add to that color. So we'll have a slightly lighter variation of that same color. Load this on the old number 3 fan brush. Load both sides nice and full. There we go. Comes to a nice sharp chiseled edge. Okay, let's go up here and we'll see about a little tree. Maybe it's just sort of a cliff dweller. It's a cliff dweller. It lives right on that little ledge right there. So we'll decide where he lives first. And we can come back with just the corner of the brush. Gentle touch to start with. And we'll work back and forth and build a little tree out there on the cliff. As many or as few as we'd like. I'm going to make a few of them. I'm going to make a few. I think they look nice against that misty area. Just using the corner of the brush and sort of bending it down. We're going to have a lot of tree practice today. That's good. Bob paints a lot of trees, so this is an excellent opportunity to practice how to paint those trees. Most important, though, is loading the brush very full and nice and smooth. Then I'm going to use just the corner. I'm going to turn the handle over and drop it down. I won't come straight in. I sort of lean the handle over to the side, and then using just that corner, very, very gently to start with, bend it a little. And as you work your way down the tree, you just sort of work in a Z pattern down the tree, zig to one side, zag to the other, and bend the brush more and more and more as you work your way down. Like I said, we'll have a lot of opportunity to paint some trees today. So don't fret. We'll cover that in more detail later. There's a bigger one. There's a bigger one. Lives right there. Don't crowd those top limbs too close together. Leave a little breathing room up top. Like I say, as many or as few as we want. We'll just go ahead and plant a few extra. And if we wind up covering them up before everything's said and done, well, so be it. Little extra practice never hurt anybody, right? Practice makes it easier, and the easier it is, the more fun you'll have. Bob's got a great technique to learn how to paint, so why not use it, right? Why not use it and do something with it? Okay. Let's wipe that brush out. I'm going to come back to the yellow, cadmium yellow, loaded up just absolutely full. And it will mix with a little bit of that excess paint, that excess dark color that was still on the fan brush. Gives us a nice pretty green. Maybe we add a little phthalo blue to that too. I love that green. Such a pretty green. Okay, let's come back. We'll add a little highlight to these. Just kind of here and there. Don't cover up all the dark. Ooh, that's important. That's so important. Leave some of that dark showing, especially through the middle. And you can sort of vary the yellows. I'm adding, sometimes I'm reaching in and picking up a little bit of yellow ochre, sometimes a little bit of Indian yellow in there with it, just to change the flavor a little bit. Don't want it to be all the same. Don't want it to be boring. I'm going to try to let it get darker and darker and darker as it works down. Softer, lighter touch. Applies less paint. Nice and light by the time you get to the bottom. Not much light would find its way down in here. It'd be mostly out on the front trees, close to the edge of the cliff, and mainly through the middle. All right, what to do next? Trees seem to be working, so let's keep going with trees. Well, we've got the tree brush working. I'll actually go back to a number 6 now. A number 6 fan brush, and I'm going to get rid of that lighter color. I'll just move it out of the way. I want to get darker now. These are darker, closer, bigger trees. Darker, closer, bigger trees that we're painting now. So I'll load the fan brush just absolutely full of that really, really dark, rich color. Again, very full on both sides. Very important, very important. And let's say we definitely want to kind of block in our cliff there, so we'll come up here in the sky, and so we'll come up again, turn the brush over to the side, drop the handle just a little, leave a little breathing room up at top for those first few branches. And then we just kind of let him unfurl as we work our way down. The bigger the tree is, the more of the brush you can use. Down he comes, down he comes. On down until he gets lost into the dark, and that's fine, that's fine. Pick up just a little more. Maybe one leans out. I don't know, right about there. He's a little bit crooked. He's a little crooked. He's got a little lean in him, but that's okay. Maybe he gets a taste of this creek water. Maybe a moonshiner lives upstream. That's some strong water he's getting there, so he's got a little bit of a lean in him. And we'll sneak one into this little gap here too. I think a nice little treetop sitting in that gap would be nice. There we go. couple on the other side. Why not? Why not? Why stop now? When it's working, keep going. Yeah, we'll have one lives right there. Plenty of paint in the brush. Nice light touch to begin. Again, I don't want to crowd those first few boughs. Let them have a little breathing room up there. You definitely want to leave a place for the little birds to sit up here. Give them a branch to kind of light on. Take in the view, take it easy. These deep Oregon woods are just so peaceful. It's a really inviting place to just sort of kind of sit back, take it easy, be introspective, sketch out some painting ideas, take your camera with you. All right. These get a little lost against the dark, so let's pick them out. Let's pick out some detail in them with a little white, a little dark sienna and Van Dyke brown. Just going to mix that to a marbled appearance, something like so. Maybe a little black just to gray it down. There we go. Small little roll of that color on the knife. Not too much, not too much. And we'll come from the side here and just touch a couple of detailed shots of our trunk. Maybe we see just a little sort of peeking through the background. A little sharper, taller top on these two, just by plowing through the paint. Doop, 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 something like that. And I'm going to go back to my fan brush I was using to paint the waterfall. It's got a little bit of white and a little bit of blue in it. This should make a very nice highlight color. If I just pull it through some yellow, actually a little bit of all three of the yellows. Maybe we add just a little bit of that phthalo blue. Just love that green. There we go. Let's come up here and drop a little highlight on some of these trees. Mainly through the middle and kind of off to the right side. Just want to be able to see those branches a little more distinctly, especially against all this dark. A little bit darker as it goes down, 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 into the distance. All three of the yellows. A little touch of the blue. Maybe even a little touch of the phthalo green. That's nice sometimes too. Just keep a variety going. That's always nice. A little change of color for this tree. This is the one that got a taste of that strong water, so maybe he would be a little different color. Just a little on this one. He's kind of in the background. That's plenty. That's plenty. Let's come to the other side. A little more of the blue. A little richer green. Of all of Bob's techniques, I almost feel like the pine trees work the best. It's hard to pick out one thing about Bob's painting method that really works the best, but these pine trees, I just love them. I just love to paint them. Pine trees and mountains, two of my favorites. Okay, let's wash that brush, get some of that dark green out of there. And the smaller brushes I just dry on a paper towel. I keep some paper towels handy here. I just dry those on a paper towel. You don't have to try to beat them on the easel leg or anything like that. Let's come back to our watercolor. We were working with a little creek color here. We need to continue our creek. Little white, little phthalo blue. just a touch darker as it falls into the valley down here. So I've got a little more blue in with this. And let's sneak back here and decide where, kind of coming away from that misty area. Maybe a couple of little falls back here. These are just tiny little waterfalls that sort of bounce and play over stones and rocks and et cetera, a little splash, and then it carries on. And as you work on this area of the painting, it's going to mix with some of that good dark color that we applied before we started. Just making little zigzags, little zigzag strokes. I almost think of these in terms of like little flat oval shapes. Make some little rapids, a little creek running away, maybe right about there. Maybe there's another little waterfall just over and down. We'll have a good chance to practice waterfalls today. Over and down, over and down, over and down. Then another little splash. Just bend the brush upward, create a little splashy area there at the bottom. And it carries on. All right, anything that looks a little too strong, we'll just take a big 2-inch brush and sort of push it back into the background, soften it down. I even like to take, maybe we can grab a little clean number 3 fan brush, and if I've got too much sharpness way back here against the mist of the waterfall, I might just sort of diffuse that top edge a little bit, just sort of rub it away, let it disappear back into the mist. Okay, going back to the 2-inch brush here. I'm just going to tap, 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 tap. Get a little bit of that dark color loaded just in the top corner of the brush. And let's decide what we have. We won't see these right away, but I'm going to add a little bit of foliage, a little bit of shrubbery right down here at the base of these big trees. Lots of ferns, lots of ground foliage grows in these forests. Very lush. And a lot of moisture in a forest like this. Lots from these waterfalls. Just sort of tapping, tapping. Blocking in a little bit of dark first. I'll switch over to a 1-inch brush. And why don't we clean up the palette? I've made a mess. Even on a big palette you can make a mess. Let me remove some of these previous colors and get them out of the way so we've got room to play. I'm going to use a 1-inch brush and just pull it through the cadmium yellow, maybe yellow ochre, maybe all 3. We'll get a little Indian yellow in there too. And just a touch of sap green. I'll take a good close look at how to load this brush. I want to make sure that I can draw it through the paint in one direction and one direction only. And as I stop and pull the brush away, you can almost see the texture or the form of a little bush appear on your palette there. Then we'll take that rounded corner and we're going to turn this up toward the top of the painting. You can actually see all of that paint right there in the end of the brush. Okay, let's go up here. We'll add some highlights to these little bushes. I'm going to go just outside the dark, gentle, gentle, gentle touch to start. Now, if your paint doesn't want to stick, you'll want to add just a touch of either paint thinner or liquid white. Either one works. It just depends on how strong you want your color to appear. I'll add a little highlight to this one. But both will soften. Both of those mediums will soften the paint. And our golden rule, I know you've heard Bob say this before, our golden rule is that a thin paint will stick to a thick paint. We'll start with a nice, thick, firm, dry paint and soften it as we go. Again, that's either liquid white or a little touch of paint thinner. It just kind of depends on the situation, what you're painting, what you're trying to achieve. Let's have, yeah, a little bit of this back here. I really like that phthalo green added with the yellow. That's one of my favorite greens. Sparkly, it's pretty. And I'm being very careful not to cover all of my dark areas in here. That's what gives this dimension and depth and makes it look good, makes it look pretty. And we can see layers and layers and layers. Take your time, don't get in a hurry, and don't get greedy. Don't get greedy. Don't try to paint a big bunch of these bushes all in one brush load. Just sort of take your time. And the truth of the matter is what happens on the palette is as, or maybe even a little more important than what happens on the canvas. If you load your brush properly, it's going to pop that paint right off on your canvas for you, and you won't even have to think about it. That's the beautiful part of this technique. It works so well if you just take the time to make sure that brush gets groomed properly. Let's add a little more here. Saving all those darks. Ooh, that's important. Don't cover them all up. Don't cover them all up. I'll finish by adding just a little touch of the phthalo blue so we get an even deeper, darker green. A little lower. There we go. All right. How about we play? Is that okay? Hope so. I hope so. I want to play around a little bit. I want to take some of this light color I was using. Let me make sure I've got a nice clean spot on the palette here. Let's play around. Let's take some of this white and brown, and I think there's a little midnight black in there too. Both browns, white, a little bit of midnight black. Maybe even a little more white. And I'm going to add to this color just a little touch of paint thinner. Just reach in there with my knife and add a little touch of paint thinner. Get that nice and soft, about the consistency of ketchup. Nice soft paint. And with the filbert, I'm going to load it on both sides. First with Van Dyke Brown. Load both sides with Van Dyke Brown, even a little touch of the midnight black. Then we're going to come over to our light color. Stay where you are, and I'll come to you. We'll come in with this light color and pull it through just one side. So I've got dark on one side, light on the other side. Let's come up here. We'll put a few little, just with the side of the brush, I'm just going to create a few little stones. You know, those flat stones that sort of live by the river. If you ever go walking by the river, you'll see them. Big, long, flat stones. Some are long, some are kind of small, but they're all very flat looking. We'll just stack some of these little stones right at the base of our little bushes and right up against our little creek. You have to come up with your own rock noise, though. I like that. Seems to make a good rock. If I just sort of. So try mine. If it works for you, use mine. If you need to come up with your own, come up with your own. That's fine. Coming up with noises is a lot of fun, too. Everything about painting's fun. Everything about painting's fun. As many or as few as you want. I like to have a lot of them just sort of lined up right there at the edge of the... To come over here on the other side. We'll have some on this side too. Maybe they kind of curve out and down. Out and down in front of the waterfall. Don't know exactly what's going to show and what's not when we're finished, so I'm just going to kind of play it safe and put in maybe more than I actually need. We'll take a number 3 fan brush, just a little bit of that light color, white and a little phthalo blue. just a little splash right along the edge of the creek here. Right up against our stones. Maybe just a few little water ripples, watery effects. Just clean up the bottom edge of those stones. All right. Coming back to my 1-inch brush that has my highlight color in it. I'm going to plant some little bushes. Maybe there's even a little moss growing on these stones. There's so much water right there, you'd think there'd be some moss. A rolling stone gathers no moss, but river rocks do. They've got lots of it, so I'm just going to kind of plant these little bushes in and amongst all of these stones, wherever they need to be. Kind of helps set everything down, especially if you have rocks that look like they're floating, plant a few bushes around them. That'll kind of anchor them down into the painting. Okay, what about up front? We've come this far. Let's see about getting brave. Let's get brave. Let's find a fan brush. I'm going to use some Van Dyke Brown and Midnight Black. Quite a bit of it too. Really load the brush full. Very full of paint. And let's make a decision here. How about right there? Yeah. Yeah, that'll work, huh? A big pine tree. I guess this is a Douglas fir. Douglas, that was my certification instructor. He taught me a lot. Maybe you'd like to be a Bob Ross certified instructor. You can do that, you know. You can do that. Learn to paint like Bob and learn to teach and share it with others. So maybe if you're interested in painting, or you've been painting, maybe you'd like to join the instructor team. That's always something to think about. Let's take a little dark sienna, a little bright red, a little touch of yellow ochre, and maybe a little white. Yeah, make a nice warm brown, very light warm brown. And it appears to me that the light, maybe it's coming from somewhere off to the side here, who knows. We have artist license, we'll use it. We'll add a little touch of highlight to this side of these trunks. Just let it sort of drift down. Just touch and give it a slight little drag to the left. Just barely. Little on his neighbor here as well. Touch, just sort of let it drift around to the left until your knife starts to run out of paint. It will naturally get a little bit darker. A little darker as you go. All right. Right through the middle, I'm going to pick up just a little touch of Midnight Black and keep that very, very dark right through the middle, a little extra dark right through the middle, just to really make that round out. And while we're in the neighborhood, maybe just for a little extra drama, let's add a touch more white to our highlight color, a little more ochre, and a little more bright red. we'll really kind of turn up the value here. Make it just a little brighter, right through the middle, right through the middle. We'll really turn the flashlight on it here. It's always kind of fun to pick out a spot where the sun's really peeking through a cloud and just a little extra brightness. A little on his friend too. There we go. I'm using a little bit of this light blue and white. I'm going to add a little touch of crimson to that. I'm going to make a reflected light color very similar to what we used way back on the cliffs. You remember that lavender color? We'll use a little combination of white and blue and alizarin crimson. And you just sort of play around with that color till you get it to the value that you like. I think that looks pretty good. We'll try it. A little touch of that color will come on the back side of the tree now. Give it just a little touch of reflected light. A little shadowed light. Just illuminates the back side of the tree a little bit. Kind of goes up the trunk and gets lost. Really makes them look round. A little on this side too. Just a little, don't get carried away. Just a little touch of shadow goes a long, long way. I'm going to reach for a script liner brush now. Let's come up to the Van Dyke Brown. And I'm going to dip and get just a couple drops of paint thinner, 2 or 3. Soften up our dark color. I want this thin like ink. Rolling the brush around and around in my fingertips. I'm going to kind of draw it to a nice sharp point. Okay, let's come up here and add some little branches to our pine tree. We'll start up at the top with just the tip of the brush. I'm going to let them kind of grow out and then reach for the sky. These old Douglas fir limbs tend to sort of drip out of the trunk and then turn up toward the sky. And then I can just fork off of those main branches. See, there comes one. And we'll kind of fork off of that in little Y shapes and little V shapes. Just make them a little stronger and a little darker wherever we need. If you have any trouble getting the paint to flow, add a little more paint thinner to it. A little touch of paint thinner goes a long, long way. Just a few little, maybe a little more paint thinner with our mixture. If it starts to dry out, you might have to add a little more paint thinner to your mixture. Once it gets out of the bucket, it starts to dry up, so replenish it every so often. And of course, his neighbor here, his neighbor needs some limbs. They need to reach across the way and shake hands. Do trees shake hands? I don't know. These do. They shake hands in my world. Maybe one of these reaches out and across. It crosses over the trunk. That's always sort of neat. There we go. Down low, we can use just a little touch of that, light color, that highlight color that I made for the bark. Just a little bit of that warm brown with some paint thinner in it as well. Maybe down here we see just a little bit of light on a couple of these branches. They don't all need highlight, but here and there it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice if one or two do. Especially if they get very, very lost against the dark. I'll just sort of let them, I'm just going to finger paint there and kind of blended into the dark. Is that allowed? I'm doing it anyway. There we go. Little touch over here. All right. How about some foliage for these big trees? We've got, yeah, there's my dark fan brush. That's what I want right there. Got that same dark tree color, that same dark pine tree color. This is a number 6 fan brush. That same dark green we were using earlier. It's just about everything. It's Prussian blue and black and brown and crimson and green. And I'm going to take the brush. This time, rather than crunching the brush down, I'm just going to push it up. So I'll keep the handle off to the side once more, and I'm just going to crunch, crunch, crunch the top corner. And we'll make some little upturned pine tree foliage. Got to make noises for that too. Crunch, 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 crunch. Now don't let the brush slide or slip or be stroked around. I'm just crunching the brush. I'm just crunching and bending the bristles right into the canvas. And leaving that imprint of paint. It's almost like you're just sort of stamping. Just think of it as like stamp, stamp, push, push. And the paint comes off of there. You don't have to work too hard. It's when you think you have to work hard that you get in trouble. Don't work hard. Bob's method isn't about working hard. It's about having fun. It's about getting some really cool results and having fun at the same time. There we go. Big, big pine tree limbs and branches and boughs out here in front, something like so. Now back to a highlight brush. Let's pick up some light color. I've got a little yellow, little ochre, a little more ochre in this one maybe, and a little touch of that phthalo green, I think. A little touch of that phthalo green, cad yellow and yellow ochre, and I'm just going to touch very lightly along the tops of the foliage now. Create some highlights. Let them bounce around wherever you want them to be. There we go. The less you mix that paint together, the prettier I think it looks. Just kind of let some of the different colors kind of dance through the mixture without trying to mix it together too much. And I'm just crunching that top corner right into the canvas. Canvas will take the paint that it wants, and it will leave you with what's left. So don't try to force it, just plenty of paint and a light, light touch. And above all, please, please, pretty, pretty please, don't cover all of the dark. Don't cover all of that dark. It's so important that you leave some showing. You've got to have it. You've got to have it. Otherwise, these poor trees just look flat. They'll go away and they'll leave you. And a little on this big branch out in front. There we go. That one's expansive. He reaches all the way across. Okay. Down front, I'm gonna just add a few more little rocks. We've been building quite a few rocks and quite a few little cliffs along the way. So I'm just gonna pick up a palette knife and use some Van Dyke brown, some midnight black. Maybe down here, I remember this area was sort of famous that I visited. It was kind of famous for big volcanic rock formations, and there was lots of it. Just interesting rocks all around. So maybe we'll cut in a little, actually a big foreground rock. Just kind of hangs out here, sort of jets out over, and right on down, right out at the bottom of the painting. How about some white, a little touch of that brown, Van Dyke brown and black, and a little dark sienna. We'll mix all those to a nice marbled appearance. Cut through it. Get that good little roll of paint, and we'll think about just a few little highlighted areas that sort of sneak along. Just catch the high points here. The high contoured points of the rock. Again, let it take what it wants, and it'll leave you with what's left. But a nice gentle touch. I still have a little bit of my cool shadow color left, so maybe I'll sneak a little bit of that in here and there and here. Just so we kind of see the back sides of some of these little rocks. Something like that. Let's find the old 1-inch brush. It's been working hard today. So we'll pick up some yellow, cadmium yellow, a little Indian yellow. Touch of both of those colors. Let's come down here and plant some little bushes and shrubs and ground foliage growing on our rocks and in between our rocks and in the cracks and crevices. Changing the color just a little each time. I've got some ochre in there. There's little touches of green. Just a little bit of everything. A little touch of everything. All right. Wash out a number 3 fan brush. I see one thing I just can't resist. I've got to do it. I'm going to pick up just a little touch of titanium white. Maybe the tiniest little bit of the phthalo blue with it, but very light. Very light. Let's find just a little extra highlight right over the top of our waterfall here. Like the sunshine just sort of peeks through. I almost feel like there's an opening there, and it would sort of peek through that little opening and just have a little extra bright spot right over the top of the waterfall there. Maybe even back here, there's just a little touch. Just right through the middle. A little extra splash, a little extra light on a couple of the splashy areas. Something like that. And I'd say we've just about got this one completed, so let's reach for a script liner brush. A little paint thinner, a little bright red. We'll come down at the corner and put a signature on this one. How about right there? Signing your name is almost just like painting tree limbs. You want to thin the paint down. Nice and loose, plenty of paint thinner. Then I use just the tip of the brush to write my name. I like to print my name. Sort of use block letters. You might call that cheating, but it's a little easier to paint that way, I think. All right. So we'll call that one completed. I hope you've enjoyed this little walk through the Oregon woods. And I hope this inspires you to use Bob's technique to create some of your own exciting paintings. Thanks for joining me. So long until next time, and happy painting.